So we're supposed to be getting storms in my area today, and I should have recorded this earlier in the week like I was planning to, but then I was like, you know what? I'll do it tomorrow. And then I started grinding up for materials in Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis, and then next thing I know, it's Friday, and now I'm like, well, I gotta get this done before tomorrow and before the storms hit. So yeah, that's been my week in a nutshell. Anyway, welcome to this week's episode of Divergence and Divine. My name is WIllspiration, and today I think I kind of want to again take a little bit of a break from the neurodivergent aspect of this and kind of shift a little bit more into like the metaphysical, spiritual aspect of this, because I feel like it's kind of a nice thing to kind of switch things up every once in a while so that it's not like the same thing. Also, because it's just something that I really like to talk about from time to time, kind of also like just showing special interests and things like that. But I think the thing that I want to cover, though, it will at least if I explain this right, it should circle back to the neurodivergent aspect, but it's mainly going to be from the metaphysical, spiritual standpoint. But that is going to be talking about more so like trusting your intuition and being your true, authentic self. So what I want to explain about this is that we've all heard it before. We all know that they always say like, if you feel it in your gut that something's not right, trust your gut. And most of the times, a lot of us are like, something feels off, but we may not necessarily know why. So then we might think, oh, it's just my anxiety. Or, oh, it's just me, getting nervous over something. Like, things will be fine, right? And then next thing you know, it turns out like the thing that we thought was going to happen actually happens. And we're like, oh, well, that kind of sucks. But that's your intuition telling you that, like, something's up. Like, I've learned the hard way through many, many years, from the time that I was a teenager to now, at the age of 32, that whenever your intuition or, your gut, either or, it's basically the same thing, everyone just calls it something different, tells you that something's off, it's always good to listen to your gut. Because more often than not, usually that does mean that something is off and that something is amiss. Whether it be from the people that you're talking to, whether it be the atmosphere of a room when you walk in, it just feels completely off. Like you just know something's like afoot. Then it's like something or someone is trying to tell you, hey, keep an eye out because something's not right here. And a lot of people tend to ignore that because they just think it's their anxiety. Now, I will say, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it is your anxiety. And it can be a little misleading. So if you can and you're able, again, like I've said in many of the other episodes in the past, getting a therapist, whether you want to go on like anti-anxiety and antidepressant medication is completely up to you. Again, just know that it might take a while to find the right medication to work. The first one that they're always going to offer you is Prozac. And while it does have the highest successful rate amongst any antidepressant and anti-anxiety, it is not for everybody. I know for me, it didn't really work. It kind of actually made it where basically I had no filter, basically, to put it simply. So I kind of was just like, I was me, but I also kind of lost that filter that I had to build up as an autistic person, because a little fun fact, like kind of slipping back into the neurodivergent aspect of this podcast, is that autistic people, and even by extension ADHD people, don't have a natural filter in their brain, so they kind of just say what comes to mind. It varies from person to person. Some neurodivergent people do have somewhat of a filter. It's just got holes in it. And then some people just straight up don't have a filter. And we have to learn how to patch those holes or how to build a filter as we get older. And The Prozac kind of makes it so that there is no filter on that, nor is there a filter on my emotions. So if I need to be patient with somebody and I take something that they say the wrong way, rather than reflecting on it for a second like I do now and being like, okay, they may not have necessarily meant that in a bad way intentionally. So I'm just going to see where this conversation goes to gauge if they meant that in a bad way. Instead, I'll just take it personally immediately and then just, go like just end up being in a bad mood. So for me, Prozac didn't really do what it was supposed to. I mean, some people can argue that it did, but in my honest opinion, I feel like if you're going to be taking antidepressants or anti-anxieties, it shouldn't take away that process of filtering out the thoughts and like not acting on impulse. So again, I would probably have to try other medications, but quite honestly, I don't really feel comfortable, especially now knowing that there is something known as serotonin syndrome, which can actually happen if your dosages are not correct on like anti-anxieties and antidepressants. So I typically, I am a little concerned about going on meds, but, or rather going back on meds, but therapy has been really good. I personally use ChatGPT as a substitute therapist in between my sessions with my actual therapist. It's not the greatest, but it does kind of pull from a lot of logical information across the internet and what the AI itself has learned from hundreds of millions of users, and it is beneficial. I'd give it like a 60 or like a 60 to 70% in terms of like accuracy. So it is something that gives you things to think about. It's definitely better than Google because it'll just give you the basis of the thing that you want to know about, and then you can ask for more specific details. So it's not like you're technically Googling stuff and like kind of psyching yourself out about something. So that's kind of nice. But going back to it, that's why typically I always like give myself a second. Not like, even if you see it in my face that it looks like I took something personally, I'll still keep going with the conversation just so I can make sure that I'm not, supposed to take it personally or not. But whenever I meet somebody, I always kind of feel out their energy, right? Like I always, as a Reiki master teacher, and even back before I got my Reiki master teacher certificate earlier last month, like literally a month ago on February 11th, as a Reiki practitioner, I always feel out people's energies, I kind of feel out who they are as a person. But sometimes, the saying of the eyes are the window to the soul. Well, that does actually have some truth to it. Once you kind of like start learning things from a metaphysical perspective, I personally feel like it kind of helps with learning more about like the physical things of like body, like, like body language and, things like that. Just because, like, at least the more subtle stuff, because there's the more bigger things that like you can train your brain to look for, like, are their feet pointing at me? Because if their feet are pointing at me, then that means that they're engaged. If one foot's pointing at me and one is not, it means that, maybe they need to get going pretty soon, or maybe that they're starting to hit their social limit with me, so I should probably let them go. And then, of course, if they are, both of their feet are facing away, then they're either A, not in the mood to talk, or B, they just don't want to talk to you in general. Not that that's a bad thing, but that is purely situational based on your situation, so you'd have to learn that, obviously. But I think it really helps, because there was one time where somebody at my work, we have like a little shout out board, and my work likes to do this thing where like, the people that get nominated for a shout out will be entered into a prize, like a little, prize pool for a free PTO day, as long as they're hired in through the company, because we have like a temp to hire service with the people that we have. So somebody was nominated, people because they thought that the person doing the nominating would get nominated for a PTO day. So I had to explain to the person, no, it's the people that you're nominating that are going to get a chance to win the PTO day, not you, the person doing the nominating. And I remember this person it was weird because this person was just like, looked at me and another employee and was just like, literally kind of got a little bit close to both of us and said, then you both better nominate me then, or something like that. I can't remember. I kind of zoned out because I was more focused on the eye contact. So like, I don't remember the words completely. I just know that I heard you better and then nominate me. But like, those were the key words that I heard in that sentence. And I know those for a fact. But the look in the person's eyes was like completely different than what they look like normally. Like, it was like this person did a complete 180 and became somebody that they weren't. Or I guess rather what people often say is showing their true colors. So this person was actually showing who they truly are. And it was kind of a little scary because you could definitely see there was a little bit of anger, a little bit of entitlement, a hint of crazy. And it kind of made me feel uncomfortable a little bit. And then all of a sudden it like just it dialed down, and then this person went back to normal. And I'm like, or at least what the people working with this person, perceive as normal. And I just remember thinking to myself, yeah, there's definitely something off about this person, which is funny because this person was in one of the onboarding groups that I was part of, like during my onboarding training. So to me, I was just like, it kind of felt like there was already something off about this person a little bit, not in a bad way, like in a, I don't mind being acquainted with you or like being your friend, but like that's probably the extent of where anything would go, is like, because there was something that just kept telling me, something's off. And then literally the next week after that person started their first full week on the production floor out of the onboarding training class, which is what we do the first week for new hires, the person exchanged social media with me. And I was like, okay, it always helps to have connections. So like, if for whatever reason, like this person were to move up at your work and you were to go, apply somewhere else, you have somebody as a reference, right? And you never know. You might get to know this person and might have some things in common. So it might actually kind of help with like, oh, maybe, being acquainted with this person isn't so bad. But I thought it was weird. And then I thought it was weirder because I have a friend at my work, and when we see each other, we chat from time to time when we see each other. Not so much anymore now that we're on different shifts, but my friend is planning to move to my shift at hopefully when they get hired in, which should be in about, if I'm looking at the calendar correctly, like 3 weeks from now, maybe 4 or 5. It depends, given that it was kind of light on work for a while. So it might be like another month before my friend gets hired in. But like this person, there was a couple times where this person cut me off from talking to that person to talk to me instead. And I felt that was a little odd. And there were a couple times where I noticed that this person seemed to be annoyed when I was talking to my friend, almost like they were jealous. And to me, it just kind of seems more like, okay, cool, that's really weird. And then I talked to this person and I'm like, okay, so surface level, what they're projecting, they seem pretty calm, pretty normal, nothing out of the ordinary. It does seem like the person's eyes tend to be a little more lit up around me, which is interesting. But then also this person has also had some, how do I say this? Like, not bad on my friend's part, but bad on this specific person's part, like interactions with my friend. I think I mentioned this in one of the earlier episodes of the podcast, like 2 or 3 episodes ago, about said interaction between that person and my friend, and another interaction. Like there's just been some very interesting things in terms of that dynamic that I've noticed. And even my friend has noticed that it's a little odd. But this person is going to be moving buildings soon, so they're still going to be working at the same employer. They're just going to be in the building across the street now instead of being in our building. So it won't be a problem for too much longer. But I just think that it's really weird because it's just like, well, what's going on here? Like, are you like, is there something on your mind? Are you, I don't know, were you looking for advice? Is there something in that like I'm not aware of? Like, do you have like a crush on me or something? Like, I don't know what's going on. And of course, with it being at work, you can't actively ask those details, especially if that person is like a step above you in terms of positions or higher, especially. So you're kind of just like, I don't know what to do here. So for me, I just kind of ignore it. When the person talks to me, I talk to them back. I treat them like I do everyone else. I don't treat them any differently. I talk to everybody the same. Very personable, very relatable. I like to get to know people, even if I don't end up being acquainted with them. At least getting to know them on a somewhat personal level, even if we're not like acquainted or friends, is still very helpful in like the workforce, because it's like at least you kind of have an idea of what like kind of person and a coworker is, and what kind of makes them tick, and what helps calm them down, so like you can kind of help avoid workplace drama and even possibly help settle workplace drama. But again, not every coworker is going to be your friend, and you're not going to be acquainted with every coworker. Like, I can safely say at my work, I can confirm like 4 friends, like guaranteed confirmed 4 friends. And I have like, like a handful of acquaintances, So I would say somewhere, a little more than acquaintances, but like not quite friend status yet. But again, those kind of connections take time to grow. So like, who knows? Maybe after interacting with them for a few more months, maybe I will say that, I consider them friends. But for right now, they're just kind of like in that in-between stage of acquaintances and friends. But again, it's very tricky at workplace situations, and especially when you're neurodivergent. So for me, I really, really trust my gut on a lot of things. So if something tells me something's not right, I will typically use my Reiki as a way to gauge people, because you kind of, as you do Reiki, you kind of learn how to like read people's energies, because you kind of have, because you have to learn how to do that in order to practice Reiki, because you're looking for blockages in people's chakras, right? You're trying to find energy blocks somewhere so you can kind of focus on those spots as you're doing the Reiki. So in the process, you really learn how to read people's energies when you see them, like without having to like, do the standard Reiki stuff of like holding your hands over chakra points or over their body or anything. Like, you can just kind of look at a person and start gauging their energy. Like, what chakras might be blocked? How long will it take? Do they need like a half-hour session? Do they need an hour session? 45 minutes, 15 minutes? Like, you kind of learn how to gauge how much work you need, like you would have to do on that person. And then kind of be able to help them be like, we can do however long you need, but I personally would recommend, like 45 minutes or like half an hour or an hour, because you want to make sure that you're helping that person out. And for me, basically, that just makes it easier to look at and be like, hey, I can kind of start reading people's energies and just kind of then it kind of makes the whole like eyes are the window to the soul thing make more sense, because now I've not only trained myself to make eye contact, because not only do I want to move up the ladder at my work, which means that I have to become more tolerable with my eye contact, which, as both an autistic and ADHD person, I kind of don't like making eye contact unless it's like with friends or with family. So there's that aspect of it. But I think the weirdest thing is that like it all makes more sense now. So now when I make eye contact with people, it's like I kind of get an idea of like who they are as a person, and what might be on their mind. And it makes that whole saying of like, people having light in their eyes make more sense, because when someone's really happy, it's really weird, because before Reiki, I could like make eye contact with someone, and if someone was really happy, it's like, I don't get it. Their eyes look exactly the same. Like, whether their pupils dilated slightly or not, or like expanded slightly or not, like expanded or shrunk, like didn't really matter, because it just seemed like it was so minor. But like now with the Reiki and everything, it's just like when I look, it's just like I can actually see it. Like I'm like, oh, okay, so now all of this is making more sense. So like now I can kind of read people's, energies, and kind of get an idea of what's, well, not the exact thoughts, but like the emotions going through their heads, or what the emotions that they're feeling. So it kind of then gives me an idea of where they are mentally. And then now it kind of makes it more sense. So like when my friend, for example, had, their depression or their anxiety is acting up, their eyes don't have as much light to them. They kind of just look kind of, bleh, because they're anxious. Like their mind is in a place of a constant state of anxiety and nervousness and all the other, emotions that you tend to feel when you have like anxiety disorders, or when you have depression, where you're just kind of, you have those emotions of like sadness and numbness, and you just kind of, that stuff kind of dulls that said light in your eyes. So then it's kind of like, okay, now I know. It's like, okay, so this person's probably, going through a lot of stuff right now, and their anxiety is acting up, or their depression's acting up, so I always just try to, be there for all my friends and family, really. So, and you'll be surprised, because like you really don't think that you have much of an impact on the people in your life. But if you start to pay attention, you'll start to see that even when someone's like depressed or anxious or going through a lot, like their eyes will light up for even if it is just for a split second, their eyes will light up, because you hearing them out, you letting them vent, you being there to offer some sort of support means a lot to them. So it is a very interesting phenomenon, and it kind of really made me appreciate more like who I am as a person, like which brings us to being your genuine, authentic, true self, which is something that I know a lot of people on the spectrum struggle with, because we tend to mask, right? We tend to hide who we are because, people will make fun of us for stimming, especially if we vocally stim. People will make fun of us because we have certain patterns, like maybe some of us like our stuff organized. Maybe some of us don't like it when things are crooked. Maybe some of us, I don't know, we just have a certain routine or a certain habit that we do that helps, keep us calm, and people look at us like we're weird, because that's not something that neurotypicals do. Neurotypicals can seemingly just ignore what they're feeling and acknowledge the feelings, but just kind of keep going. So like if they're nervous, they'll be like, I'm nervous, but like it's whatever. But like for a neurodivergent person, you're like, I'm nervous, and it literally is not going away. Like, why am I nervous? I shouldn't be nervous. Where like as neurotypicals, it's just like, it just seems like they can acknowledge that and just move on and just like work through it. But for us, it's just kind of like, it's a why. It makes us go, why am I feeling like this? And it is hard, especially when, people are going to be judging you, because a lot of people judge. I don't care. Like, there are very, very few people that they say, that can actually say, I don't judge, and actually mean it. But a vast majority, I would say like probably 90% of humans can say, oh, I don't judge. And out of those 80%, or 90%, I'm sorry. Out of that 90%, I would say maybe 20% of those people judge slightly and then go, but I feel kind of bad for judging though, because like I don't know what this person's going through. But at the same time, it is genuinely odd. And then the other 70% of that 90% are like, oh, I don't judge, but they judge. And then they'll just, talk shit about you behind your back because they judge. Like, people lie, especially neurotypicals. Neurotypicals have a higher rate of being deceitful and lying than neurodivergent people do. Because honestly, the one thing that I've noticed about being neurodivergent is no matter how hard I try, and I've asked a few neurodivergent people this too, but it just seems like no matter how hard a neurodivergent person tries to lie, they can't. Whenever a situation arises, you're just gonna blurt out the truth, and it kind of sucks because it kind of puts you in a really tough spot sometimes. Because if someone wants your honest opinion, you're like, okay, well, I should lie to them because like my honest opinion about what this person is asking me is not going to be something that sits well with them. But at the same time, I'm a horrible liar. So do I even bother lying and saying what they want me to say? Because I feel like it's just easier to give my honest opinion. And I remember I had a friend in high school, and junior year, she cut her hair down to a short bob, and it sat just a little bit like me. I hit my mic. Maybe like an inch past her chin, and she was asking people what they thought, and people were commenting on her MySpace post, about it. And I remember I just gave my honest opinion, and I said, I I don't like it, but if you like it, that's great. And that was it. And apparently I made my friend cry because it hurt her feelings that I didn't like the haircut. But the thing is that for me, like, a girl asking a boy his opinion, one, at that age, let's face it, when we're teenagers, none of us are mature. It's extremely rare to find a teenager that has already got the mentality of someone in their 20s when they're in their teens. So, and then you factor in the neurodivergent aspect where I'm just like, well, I'm just going to give my honest opinion. If a girl is asking me what I think, I'm going to tell her what I think. And that's, I like women, like I like girls with longer hair, right? And even to this day, it's true. Like, even now at 32, like, I always, like, it's not as bad anymore. Like, if a woman can rock like a bob cut like that, where it's like, an inch past her chin, like, cool, she looks good with it. She looks good with it. But like, I always prefer women with like shoulder length hair or longer. That's not to say that I wouldn't date someone with, like a woman with shorter hair, like, that style of a bob cut. But it's just not my preferred style. You know what I mean? So again, it's just kind of like, I felt really bad and I apologize because like I didn't mean to make you cry. It's just you asked for my opinion and I wasn't gonna lie to you because then that would be wrong of me. And eventually, we made up and it was okay. But it was just kind of, I think it was like the first time where it was a reality check for my friend that not everyone is always going to agree with their opinion or agree with their choices and style, be it the way they do their hair or the way they dress, or, if they decide they want to dye their hair a different color, that, people might not like it. But it also taught my friend to not really care what other people think, because as long as she's happy with how she looks, that's all that matters. And it's funny because, like, to bring it back to being your true authentic self means not just not just like expressing your opinion, but like also expressing boundaries. Like you also have to take care of yourself, because at the end of the day, I guess you yourself as a person matters too. If there's something that makes you uncomfortable, it's always good to kind of just put that out there ahead of time. Like, hey, I don't like loud noises. So like, please try not to talk too loud, or, please don't like slam things or anything that would like really affect your sensory issues with hearing, you put that out. Or if you have a history of like being mentally and verbally abused in relationships, it's something that you want to bring up. Like, I would rather you just be open and honest with me. I don't like people that lie. I don't like cheaters. I don't like people that can't communicate, because you put those boundaries out ahead of time. And you're basically saying, I want someone that's honest. I want someone that's going to communicate. And I want someone that's going to work on this relationship when things get tough. Because immediately, if somebody says that they can do that, you're going to want to take it at face value, right? But if you're not good at reading people, you're also kind of like, but I can't tell if they're lying or not. So maybe I should go through with it. And I feel like that's fine, but the moment that they show anything that crosses that boundary, for example, then you go, okay, this person's going to end up being just like all the other people that I dated. And then you just cut them off right then and there and be like, look, with the way things are going, I don't feel comfortable with us being together anymore. I'm going to break up with you. And then that's that. Because that person might have gotten away with treating other people like shit in the past, but you're the first person that stopped them in their tracks and be like, yeah, no, we're done. Goodbye. And then that kind of makes them go, oh shit, there are actually people that'll stand up to me and not put up with my shit. And that'll either make a person kind of question how they treat people, or it'll make them refine their tactics on how to be more abusive. One of the two. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to humans, it's either when humans are doing something wrong and someone finally calls them out on it, there's either two things that are going to happen. Either A, they are going to genuinely try to become a better human being, or B, they're just going to become more evil, more wicked, and more bitter, and try to find ways to continue to manipulate and control and abuse people, rather than being like, oh, I'm a piece of shit. Maybe I should actually start being a better human. So there's also that thing as well. And for me, I feel like that, like Reiki and just kind of learning more about metaphysics has really helped make sense of how to like develop the things that as a neurodivergent I was not naturally born with, like how to read people and that kind of stuff. So now I don't just trust people blindly. It's kind of allowed me to learn how to develop and build those skills that we as neurodivergents are not naturally equipped with, like neurotypicals are. And yeah, sure, it might have taken me from, 13 to 30 to finally build that skill, but better late than never, right? Because now, from my 30s until my last dying breath on my deathbed, I have the ability to know when someone is not being honest. I have the ability to tell when someone is, weird or something's off about them. I have that ability to know who to trust, who not to trust. And it allows me to keep my energy safe. It allows me to finally start expressing my boundaries on what makes me feel comfortable, like what makes me feel comfortable and what makes me feel uncomfortable, and what my likes and my dislikes are, and the things that I value in the people in my life, whether it be a future girlfriend or as a friend, or even just in the people that I work with. Because even in a workplace situation, you're going to want to value certain aspects of, employees, because some employees are really good and they don't get they don't get recognized for their hard work. And then there are people that do the bare minimum and get recognition when they actually do the job that they're supposed to do. And then it just kind of reinforces, oh, Well, if someone's going to do the bare minimum and then when they actually do their job, they get rewarded, then why am I giving it my all out work if I'm not going to get, that recognition like that person did? So like for me as a future leader, I want to make sure that the people that do get recognition deserve it. And then when someone who does the bare minimum actually does their job, I'm going to be like, then you can be like, wow, I'm proud of you. You are actually doing the job. And at first, it's going to sound condescending as fuck, right? It's going to be like, wow, what's that supposed to mean? And then that's when me as a leader go, because the more I watched you work, the more I realize you're doing the bare minimum and you are scraping by. And me as your, manager or lead or supervisor, that means that consistent behavior means that I would have to give you either just a barely meeting expectations or falling below expectations. And if you're falling below expectations, not only do you not get a raise, but that also calls into question the knowledge that you have about your position. So seeing you work now tells me you can do it. Now we just need to figure out what is happening, whether it's because you genuinely, is it like you're like me where you're neurodivergent and you have issues? Are you depressed? Are you anxious? Are you stressed? Or are you like actually truly genuinely lazy and, we're going to have disciplinary issues at some point down the line? So that's all stuff that I, as a leader, need to look into. So now that I see that you can actually do the job right, that's good. Now we just need to figure out why you're not, because I get it. I was a Packer too. I, can completely understand not wanting to be here. You just want to get your 8 hours and go. That's completely fair. We're all like that. Hell, even as a lead, I'm ready to leave, go out those doors at the end of my shift too. Like, I'm like, all right, I've had my fill of work for the day. So completely understandable. But at the end of the day, the company makes money, we get paid, and if we hit that goal for the employee incentive plan, then we get a bigger payout at the end of the year, which means we really need everyone to actually step it up and do their job as intended. So for me, I want to know what I can do for you to get you to hit this level more consistently so that, we can all get that bonus, because I'm pretty sure you'd like, $3,000 at the, in the middle of the year, right? We all want free money. If work is going to give us $3,000, why wouldn't I actually, do my best at work every day so that we can hit that number? So for me, that is just me being my honest self. Like when I become a leader, that's how I would approach things. It's like trying to figure out how to get people to do their best and what's on their mind. And you know what? Maybe I'll even make a log of that, and be like, okay, this person, wrote this, said this. And I might, look into it and be like, what can I do specifically to get this person to do that amount of normal work? Like, what is, like based on what they said that I wrote down, what can I do to fix certain things if I have the power to fix them? Or how can I suggest this to like upper management so that we can get this implemented? That kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's just really staying true to yourself. And the more you are your true, authentic, genuine self, the more you're going to realize that people are going to start leaving your life because they did not have any true intention of, being your friend or being, in a relationship with you, or that you might find out that there are familial struggles after all in your family. And at the end of the day, that's why my circle is so small. Like I only have like my 4 friends, that I made from, at work. And then I got like another 4 or 5 friends outside of work that I've met elsewhere. I only genuinely have like 8 or 9 people that I can truly call friends. And even then, out of those 8 or 9 of them, I only text like 2 or 3 of them on a near daily basis. And even then, 2 of them deal with anxiety and depression. And then one even has like OCD. So there's some times where I'll text those two people on a daily basis, and then there's times where I won't even hear from them for like, 2 days to like a week. They might leave a reaction on like a text or a message on Facebook, but they may not necessarily respond. And both of them are parents. So sometimes they're just genuinely busy with their kids. So not like we don't text like all the time, but there's times where like we'll text like every day, and there's times where we might only text like for an hour a couple times a week. Understandable. But they're like the two people that I talk to the most consistently. And one of them is one that I've known since I was a kid. The other one is one of the 3 people that I made friends with at work that I talk to on a regular basis. So with that, I'm going to wrap up today's episode of Divergence and Divine. As always, if you guys enjoyed this episode of the podcast, make sure you leave a like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, because the notification bell will give you notifications of when I upload the newest episode. And yeah, with that, I hope you guys have a good weekend and a good start to your next week. And don't forget to always be your true, authentic self. And I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.